Welcome to video number 6 in the SASS mini-series. This one's going to be about imports and partials. So what are imports? Well, like they are in most language, it's when you want to import some code from one file into another file. Now, if you've ever written any amount of CSS, I'm sure you've come to the point where your file is hundreds of lines long and it's getting more and more difficult to locate the CSS that you want to edit. So you get to that point, you want to break your file up into separate files to make it easier to edit, but it can become difficult to decide where do I want to break the file up, how do I want to make it into the different pieces. Do I want to do it by colors, fonts, by part of the page, by function? So there can be some difficult decisions, and it means for each one of those CSS files you also have to add a link tag into your HTML file, or you have to have one main CSS file that uses @import to bring in the other CSS files. Well, SASS makes this a little bit easier because you can do things functionally and have SASS do the work of combining them all into a single CSS file that's compressed. So let's look at this project here. I have a folder called SASS, inside of which I've got 4 SASS files: main.scss, bubba.scss. Inside of main, I've got some variables and just a few declarations. Bubba just has this one class with a few properties inside of it. I've got a couple of others that have got underscores in front of their names. And here's my old version that I compiled here. What I want to do is, right now, I'm going to tell SASS to compile everything that's inside this folder into this folder. So all the SASS files inside of here are going to become CSS files over here. So I run that. And here's what I end up with. In my CSS folder, there's a bubba.css and a main.css, but I don't have these files. And there are things inside of them, you know, or defaults does have something inside of it right now. The reason that they didn't show up here is because their names start with an underscore. If you want to just compile the whole folder like this, then all you have to do is put underscores in front of the names, and those will no longer be copied over. So if I rename this one as underscore bubba, like that, and I come up here and I'll delete these bubba CSS and the bubba CSS map files from the folder. Okay, done, great. Come back and I will rerun this. It doesn't show up again. So the main.css, it has just the stuff that was inside of main.scss. So these styles right here, that bubba file with that class, it's not showing up in here, but it's also not showing up in here, which is what we want at this point. If we want to include that, what we do is we come in here and we say, hey, you know what? I want to @import the bubba file, the vars file, the defaults file. The way we can do that is simply by giving this part of the name. We don't have to write the underscore. We can, but we don't have to. We can write the file extension, but we don't have to. If you write bubba, SASS is going to search this folder for anything that has bubba inside of it, that started with an underscore or didn't, that has SASS or SCSS as the file extension. This is all we have to do. And if you want multiple ones, we can bring those in as well. So defaults and vars, I want all of those. So I'll save that. I'm going to move all my variables now over into this file. Saved. Come back. Now, because I have imported that vars file, it means I've got access to everything that was inside of there. These variables are still going to work. So I save that, I come up, I recompile it. Now let's go take a look at the compiled version in the CSS file. There's from bubba, here's from my defaults, and here's all the stuff from main, and we can see that the variable values worked. So we got everything from those files. And I've only got the one CSS file showing up here. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. Even if we do the watch command, so we can save any changes that get made. So CSS :/CSS. There we go. Now it's going to keep watching for changes as we make them in these files. So if I come back here, let's say that I don't want Bubba included. So I'll save that change. Boom, that compiled it. That removed Bubba from there. What if I remove defaults? Save it. Okay, compiled it. Now my defaults and that crazy pink class, those aren't in here anymore. But there is an inheritance inside of the files that happens as well. So I could come into the vars file and say in here, you know what? I'm going to import the defaults file. So this is going to import this file into vars. So my box sizing style got imported into here, and then this got imported into here. So main.css, sure enough, there's the styles from defaults. They were copied from defaults to vars to main. So there's a cascade that goes on of inheritance. Very useful. Now, if you've written a lot of CSS, you're probably aware of the @import directive that is part of CSS. And that's one of the things about SASS is it's written in a way that will appear to the browser as valid CSS. There's nothing that will cause a syntax error when you're dealing with CSS. If the browser opens this, it may not be able to render it all, but it's not going to give you errors. It's going to be able to read the file. So if I want to have something brought into my main.css that is actually an import, well, let's create a file here. Let's say new file is going to be called other.css. Okay, so this is a file I got from somebody else. It's not part of my SASS, we'll say, just for argument's sake. I'll just put something in here just to have something in the file. So I have a CSS file that somebody else has given me. I want to include it inside of here, and I wanted to use the @import to bring it in. So how am I going to do that if the @import command is always looking for SASS files? Well, I can still write @import. What I'm going to do, though, is other.css, like this. Come back into main, and there it is, @import other.css. So it's going to bring in that file. SASS will ignore this command and not treat it like a SASS import if your file has a CSS extension, or you put it inside of a URL like this. If you put it inside the URL or it's got a CSS extension, both of those cases, it's going to treat it like it is a normal CSS import. Or if it starts with HTTP : or HTTPS, if it starts with HTTP something, then this is going to be treated like a normal CSS import. So it's refreshed, come back in, and sure enough, there's the import of other.css. So we have that, as well as all the stuff that we compiled from SASS. And that's it. That is imports and partials. With the underscore in front of them, those are called partials. So if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. If you found it useful, please share it. And as always, thanks for watching.